All right, welcome back to another episode here of Beyond the Forecast. Michael Clark here with BAM Weather. Super excited today to bring in Doug Reed, and he is and correct me if I say this wrong, Doug, because the county is a little interesting to pronounce, but it looks like Pottawattamie County.
You got it right. You got it right.
Beautiful. All right, he's the EMA director there out of Iowa. And what we're going to do today is kind of talk to Doug and kind of conversate back and forth about how really the changes in the National Weather Service, the funding, the data, the staffing, and everything has impacted operations. And what folks in positions like Doug, what can they do? What's out there? How do guys like this, you know, adapt, change, adjust, and go forward. So before we get into a lot of that, Doug, I'm just kind of curious your background, your tenure and stuff with in your role there at the with EMA director.
Yeah, I really enjoy this line of work, and get to pull off of a lot of past experiences to kind of, do the things I do, from the emergency management field. You know, grew up here in this county, in the rural parts of our eastern portion of the county, and graduated and went off to the military. Spent 4 years active duty, a couple doing National Guard after that. Kind of moved back to the area and settled down eventually, and have worked in the private sector, but most of the time I've been in the public sector and worked in different venues like for our 911 dispatch center. I worked for our sheriff's office in the corrections department for a little while. Spent about 6 years as a reserve deputy sheriff, and just like we do in rural states, volunteer firefighter and EMT, in my small rural community. So yeah, had that experience, to add to what I do now. And emergency management started probably about 2000, first year part time, then made full time the following year. Been here with the agency ever since. Took over as director in the fall of 2012, and it's been a run ever since. But a lot of good experience. So been able to serve as a planning section chief and an incident commander with our state's incident management team, and go out and get some good experience in other parts of the country, but also traveling around doing disaster emergency work within our state, and here locally, obviously. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Nice. That's a hell of a resume, my friend, for sure. You've done it. Sounds like over the last several years. What would you say, Doug? And this is more so really for me, and I'm sure maybe people listening are curious too. But in your position, in your role as it pertains to weather, what is some of the biggest challenges that you face? Like when it comes down to making decisions and functioning in your role, what are some of the hardest parts about your job as it pertains to weather?
I would say not knowing for sure, right? Anybody that's a forecaster knows all the good forecaster jokes, right? And they go, "Hey, I wish I could be wrong half the time in my career. We'd all be, you know, right? It's funny, tongue in cheek, but there's some reality to it, right? Because it's a science, but it certainly is. Mother Nature proves us wrong a lot, right? Uh, Forecasting, the equipment, the technology, the models have come so far along since the original days of the public forecasting and everything that it's amazing. And the lead times we've been able to trim down on warnings and things like that compared to when all this originally started, is amazing. But it's bridging that fine line between communicating with our partner agencies, our stakeholders, on potential risk and possibility, and what the forecast really is, and what those probabilities really are. Um, from the most simple things, like, does my athletic director postpone a baseball game or tournament, or do they cancel JV and just do varsity and start it 2 hours early to get it in? Uh, do we not send our teams traveling all the way to, we're working going disaster recovery operations, and we've got to get hundreds of volunteers and emergency workers out of harm's way, and we need time to do that, to move people and equipment, which we did quite often last year in 2024 when we were recovering from three consecutive presidential disaster declarations that impacted my county. We had a lot of people out working for months, and often had to use weather forecasts and probabilities and assessments to just make the right decisions. And sometimes the weather just doesn't pan out. And so sometimes you get partners, stakeholders are like, well, what do we do that for? And so they might not, the risk is, or the fear, I guess, from my seat is they might not want to listen as much next time, but it's really about promoting the preparedness of it. Uh, and that we'd rather be ready and on than you know, the other side of the fence.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into kind of, what I want to talk to you about today. And so everyone listening knows, we have colleagues and friends in the National Weather Service. We didn't strip the budgets. We're not cutting people back. It's not that we are for this or that we're supporting this. What we're more interested in is, how can folks that have had reliance on the Weather Service over the years pivot to some locations? Some folks aren't even getting access to be able to talk to the Weather Service anymore. Some of offices are going on shift work. So there's a lot of challenges there. The reason I want to question Doug today is not to make it seem like we're we're for the budget cuts and everybody struggling here. What we want to learn is how can um, EMA directors, athletic directors, a lot of the folks that have relied on NWS over the years, how can they shift and pivot towards staying informed, as you just said, making decisions, preparedness, and um, what has been some things, Doug, that you've been able to do to kind of help fill the gap there? Even there may not even be one in where you're at. Some places may not be experiencing this, but if you have been, or if you know guys, kind of what does that look like for you all?
And I'd certainly echo what you said. A lot of folks that I've grown some really great relationships with our local NWS office. Great, hardworking, very intelligent folks, and very good at what they do. Um, and same question you're kind of posing. At least during this current administration, I've had the media call. Oh, what do you think about this? And what about this? And all these. And I've got, again, this is from my perspective, and don't know if it'd be real popular or not, but, uh, at least at our forecast office and some other areas here in this immediate region, right, they were short staffed, and have been for a couple years now, right? So this isn't anything that's really new. I think, at least from what I've observed, that like the offer for early retirements, those kind of things have had the you know uh, more of a expanding the shortages a little bit, right? But again, that's just kind of been my observation from outside. But again, great folks, great work, regardless of the reason. Yeah, there's some in this region, not maybe necessarily our forecast office, that's had to go to the shift work stuff, and another office is covering in their off hours, those kind of things. So access could be a little bit. We've kind of seen where, if we've got a special event that's coming up or something like that we need an extra eye on, a little support with what in their world, they call the decision support services. Um, that's got to be. into them or requested, pretty far ahead of time, which not always, we get that. They're always there. They're always there for a phone call for us. That's not a problem. But a lot of the things that we have enjoyed over the past so many years, like we had a standing every Tuesday, 10 o'clock in the morning, we'd have a conference call in this forecast area with emergency managers and the weather service. Right? What's going on this week? Are we seeing anything the next couple? Ask some questions, move about our day. Could be, 10 minutes, could be, a half hour, depending on what's going on. But it really created that personal connection, and created a lot more conversation and trust in the overall system and our partnership together, which we don't get to do right now. And those kind of things. We've had the benefit of before, being able to put in a request and having a physical. There have been several events that we've run where we've had a NWS forecaster come out to the event, working out of our mobile EOC, slash command post, if you will. Just paying attention to our event and chatting back with the office and being there for us, and those things are kind of out. We've experienced in this last year kind of an early termination to the people available to travel to do the weather spotter trainings and those kind of things. So it has had an impact, but again, I still want to give a shout out to our folks at the Omaha Valley office because they were short staffed. We entered into 2024, which was just a unprecedented year of activity for us as far as tornado damage, floods, winds, big hail, just all the time, it seemed like. So
Yeah. And I think, that is it tells a lot because a lot of folks I don't think know the extent of what some of the local offices do for folks like you. And the thing that I think that a lot of people also don't understand is very difficult, if not impossible, for them to be able to do that for every single EMA, for every single school, every single outdoor event. At that point in time, it's almost as if you can't do it. And so when you scale back the staffing and and the funding, then it's just even harder. And so it's certainly an unfortunate situation, struggle, and it's nothing really what it sounds like, especially as the staffing has been a struggle for a while. What I'm interested in, Doug, is essentially, what kind of supplemental things have we been able to provide you that have allowed you to get maybe have some of that confidence in your decision making or the forecast process of, you know, probabilities and that kind of thing? Can you speak to maybe how we've been able to um, fill that gap, if you will?
yeah, I think it really goes to just like what my partnership and operational preferences are, to a pretty strong degree, right? What I want to be able to do, for my agency, for my staff, reaching out to all of our stakeholders and partners is to give them the information they need to operate and make wise choices on a daily basis or when we have special events during incidents that are ongoing. And so we're talking anything from our roads departments, our public safety, our schools, even some of our nonprofits or just community events that are going on. So there's a wide breadth of folks that we talk with or provide information to on a daily basis regarding weather. Other things as well, but weather is certainly a significant component of it. Us being in the location of the country we are, and so what I value is, um, being able to trust the information I'm getting to a degree that I'll put it out there, but make sure that they know that it's not me just saying, I woke up this morning, had some coffee on my deck, licked my fingers, stuck it up in the air, and this is what my gut's telling me, right? But I also don't want to just go to a public website and see the weather story of the day or try to interpret, you know, model data that I'm not trained to interpret, right? I'm a pretty basic guy when it comes to weather, right? Uh, Green or blue's okay, red is usually bad. And or adverse anyway. So,
Sure. Spot
you
on.
know,
You're spot on.
hey, but I didn't get the degree for it to be able to say what that really means. And probabilities in weather. I mean, it's just so dang difficult. You know, uh, the only times I've ever been told that this is like as near to 100% gonna happen are usually the times that I haven't ever wanted to hear that about a topic, right? So um, it is what it is. But uh, as far as is coming, coming into the bam weather family, so to speak, is that we've been able to reconnect some of that stuff and even to a little bit. And again, this is no bash on my friends at NWS at all, to be able to enhance that a little bit, because I think the one advantage that you have that maybe some of the forecasters at the NWS aren't really freely to express all the time is maybe what their gut is really telling them as a professional forecaster, right? Because they're government based, they're federal government based. So if they've got a policy for everything and and for good reason, right? But you know, at some point we all got to just agree that we're all in government, and that's maybe that comes also with its own challenges. So
Yeah.
so to have an event coming up or something like that, and to be able just to immediately from my cell phone, my iPad, or the operations center here at my office, to just get on and hit the chat box and say, "Hey, I'm seeing this. I don't know what what do you got for us?" And then you get a summary and the freedom to say, "Yeah, but what's your gut tell you?" Right? And that's valuable to me. You can spit me out all the forecast information and a percentage and this and that. But what your forecasters are free to do, and I usually don't have to ask, is they just say it anyway, which is awesome and just as valuable as the technical stuff. To a guy like me, it's more valuable because they're like, well, there's possibilities of this right here, and we're seeing this kind of setup, but everything is kind of pointing that I would, kind of more err on the side of caution with this one, or I really think it's going to stay north because some of these models just ain't quite right, and I really don't trust this one. So I think it's that is huge in the decision making process, but only if you have that trust with each other, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. It's interesting because listening to you say that, it reminds me of honestly why bam weather was started 13 years ago. I'll never forget because we had a major snowstorm in the charts. The models were for us, they were hitting at a big one. And when you would look at the discussions and the forecasts from various, offices and agencies, it was, hey, there may be enough snow to coat the ground, it may not be. And when you talk about being restricted on things you can say, it's like, gosh, I mean, that's not, it's this, so I kind of grew, a passion grew, and it's like, there's more to this. We need to talk about, what's really possible here. And so to me, you know, kind of having that bolder, less restrictive ability to forecast the weather, a lot of times can really help folks like you and not just your industry, but all over the place, because we're not really handcuffed or restrained on what we can say. And it's not to the fault of the individuals. It's just the rules. It's just the way that it is. So that's certainly been a big reason as to why we exist today is trying to get folks to understand. I'm not saying we can be 100% accurate or perfect, but I'm saying a lot of times there is a lot of evidence or reasoning to um, forecast it quite a bit differently than what you might be seeing, and that can help out quite a bit in certain situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was, it just reminds me of an event we just did, right? Annually, uh, here in the largest community I have in my county, right along the Missouri River, city called Council Bluffs, Iowa. It's a neighbor and part of the Omaha, Nebraska, metro area. We have a annual Fourth of July celebration, and it's quite interesting because it's held at a lake here in Council Bluffs, which is actually a state park. So it's state property. The fireworks and the event itself is put on by a private nonprofit organization. So they raise money all year long to buy fireworks. But there's kind of just limited ways in, a small road around the lake. There's a campground, there's parking areas, there's all kinds of stuff. So when you're bringing in 5,000 some people into a fairly small state park with limited parking, is I mean it can get challenging traffic wise, safety wise. It's not like for a holiday celebration. We certainly aren't a dry county, right? So people show up very early. They barbecue, they start drinking. So all the problems of a bigger community celebration, an event. Add that you have boat traffic now because people want to watch it from the water. You also have people there that are paying to camp. But our state Department of Natural Resources only has so much staff and officers. They bring in from many, many other parks and counties to do public safety and traffic control points internally, but the exit is out onto a state highway. And other city roads. So, we've got partners that we bring in, from the Department of Transportation, the City of Council Bluffs Police Department, Public Works, the County Sheriff's Office, the City Fire Department for EMS and fire protection, and Department of Natural Resources, and their park officers, their water patrol officers, and a lot of moving parts. And we were looking at some potential weather. And the state park requires the nonprofit that's got limited funds. You got to do the porta potties, you got to do the trash bins, you got to do all this stuff, right? And that's all good, but it's like, oh man, we got weather coming in for this, and we need to pay attention. And so one of the things, just as a kind of a little use case for everybody, is we were able to work days in advance, a week in advance, with forecasters from BAM, and saying, yeah, this is we've got a concern about this time frame, and so we started making those arrangements and started talking about stuff. But that morning, um, I got up uh, right when I was getting ready to go to church because we had it on a Sunday. This was a week ago, and and I watched the morning video update for Iowa. And it's like, man, this doesn't look so bad. I think we're going to get this thing in, right? And of course, I had stuff to do and get ready. But when I was at church, I'm on our music team, so I was getting ready for practice. I had a service, and I've got the nonprofit event coordinator freaking out, texting me like, I don't know, I'm looking on. I won't name this other. It wasn't the NWS stuff, but it was a different private weather company that he was looking at the forecast on his phone. He's like, I don't know. We can save a whole lot of time and trouble for everybody if we just call it now and go with the rain date. And I'm like, and I told him, I haven't got a lot of details. I looked at the forecast this morning. I said, we need to hold off. I said, let's just give it. I said, we can have another conversation maybe at noon. I'm like, but I really think we're okay to wait until 4 o'clock, which we had already set up with one of your forecasters to join us via Microsoft Teams from the command post on site with the leadership team to go over the latest forecast and make a go no go decision if we needed to. And by then, just like the morning forecast update indicated, that calmed me down, that let me calm my partner down. It it worked out, and we stayed completely dry the entire evening. It was absolutely beautiful. Uh, and really, so, that's kind of how we leverage, supplementing what the weather service does every day with BAM, is to just kind of keep using those tailored or more personal conversations and abilities, because as a customer, you guys are here for us specifically, not necessarily as a wide whole community public service, but whoever's on board is on board, and that's your primary. And so that, kind of goes back to, what I value, when it comes to, weather forecasting, and kind of what really suits our needs. And it was a great deal. It Again, it was the difference in doing an event for the public or not, but also, not wasting, we wait too long to make the decision with the bad information, or just a general forecast that was given early in the morning, and there's no time to really update it, or you have that personal connection of a chat message coming in the middle afternoon unsolicited, from one of your forecasters, which is awesome, by the way. uh, you know, we would have to pay at least like a minimum 2 hours overtime to every public safety responder that was coming out, just to cancel, if we weren't able to make a decision. Um, so we were able to avoid a lot of that hassle just with that simple little event.
I mean, that's awesome. It's always fun to hear actual use cases, of how folks are utilizing it, and how it's helping them. So it's really cool. I appreciate that. And I think too, it goes, a lot of people will say, well, there may be rules or policies in place to limit the hype or the fear in weather forecasting. But it's not always true. It's also the opposite. It's giving people windows. It's kind of going against the idea of it's going to be a washout or a severe weather outbreak or a major storm. A lot of times it takes a gutsy call to say, hey, actually, this one's going to miss us. I know there's a winter storm watch out, but we think it's actually going to go south or whatever. There could be a number of things there. Um, but it's it's challenging and intimidating to do things like that. But our forecasters they're so good. They do such a great job. So it's a really, really neat story. Doug, I'm curious. One last question I have for you, and appreciate your time today. This has been fun to hear you talk. And um, when it comes down to situations where um, weather has suddenly surprised you, okay, where it's like we didn't even tell you, like we missed it, and you know, because it's going to happen. We're going to miss it, you know, and it's crap's hitting the fan. Someone in your role, does weather matter anymore from that point, or is it now into your responding to the situation, the weather is what it is? How does that kind of, how do pop-ups or unexpected weather events impact you?
Well, I there's always a little bit of a sense of readiness, regardless of, I guess, the significance of the probability, I guess. Right? We've always said, and if you go back, it's more anecdotal at this point because I really haven't run the numbers for a long time. But previous to at least 2024, I'll say my experience, here in our county is we had more impactful weather days on a, slight risk day, right? A marginal or a slight risk day than we ever had with a moderate or high risk day. High risk days are very, very rarely, out there, at least in the NWS, parlance for us, right? But we get, we'll get some moderates here and there, but we've had more actual, tornadoes or some type of storm damage or something like that in the, marginal or slight risk days, kind of a deal, right? But we're one of those weird counties too that have seen, one year we had three tornadoes touch down in our county on December 15th, for Pete's sakes. It was just one of those weird kind of things. It's like, what is going on? But so it is. So, surprises can happen. Um, uh, and sometimes they do really surprise you, and you get busy responding, but weather is still important, and you have to go with what you got because the weather at the time is going to it impacts what your response is, and your initial recovery effort. So um, it's not like even on those, let's say, bad forecast days, right? Where everybody just got it wrong, that you can say, well, they're not going to do me any help. We'll have to try and figure out how to do it ourselves, right? You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater either, right? So, it's just one of those things, and you got to roll with the punches. Again, I won't lie to anybody. It's why I like, we use, previous to coming on to BAM, we always did it with weather service stuff, but we've integrated the information that we get from you as well, to more of a degree now, obviously that we're a customer and have access into our daily operations briefing, or our senior leadership briefings that we'll put out on a risk day. And we think that, okay, forecast indicating this could be something we want to know, let our partners know specifically. I mean, we'll hyperlink your morning video forecast to our daily brief, or use your graphics and embed that into the information that we're putting out, right? So we always point to our source, if you will,
That's awesome, by the way.
right?
That's exciting.
I
Yeah.
mean, just because, there's two advantages as an emergency manager for that. One of them is selfish, and the other one is confidence, right? That, okay, Doug Reed isn't forecasting this weather and thinks that we're going to get 3 inches of rain and some, urban street flooding out of this deal, right? It's being forecast. And this is who's doing the forecast, and they're actually forecasters. They're people that are trained and experienced in this, and not Doug just, sniffing the dirt, and licking his finger and holding it up in the air. The other thing is that when it is wrong, I've already thrown you under the bus, right? So
So you can blame
yeah.
us instead of
So
you.
you get a little operational cover with it too. I mean, we do with the NWS stuff or your stuff or whatever, right? It's like this is where we're getting our information. This is why we're telling you, if this forecast materializes, you need to consider these things. Schools, you need to consider your afternoon sports, practice and competition schedule. You need to do this. And we've, through the years, we've built a rapport with our partners and our public safety agencies and community leaders that, they'll see something in one of our daily briefs or something that we put out special, and we'll get a phone call from a superintendent saying, hey, we're supposed to have our annual, holiday concert tonight. What are you really thinking? Right. And so, it's all good. There's going to be bad forecast days, just like I'm going to have bad days, managing volunteers at a disaster site, or, whether I should have pulled the trigger, on more and I didn't, or I went way overboard, based on what you just, everybody goes with their gut at the end of the day, and we're all human, so it's going to happen. But
Yeah.
that's kind of how I
That's
deal with it.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say is, it's we are humans, and it's, everybody, it's we're prone to going wrong here or there. And one thing I wanted to say was is even when that happens for the folks listening, we want to be there step by step, even if initially it was missed or not seen. It can still be caught once it gets on radar. Once things are rolling, we can still help and walk along side by side with you and help with decisions. So you're not in the dark, and that's what I was, uh, trying to put out there.
Yeah, and it kind of just reminds me of something else, like kind of back to one of your other questions about, how we use you to supplement and things like that, and just the ability to communicate a little more efficiently, right? We can have, say, a event impacting, or it's inbound, or it's already created some impacts. It's ongoing. We got things going on here, right? We can have, just like we saw last year, unfortunately a lot, but just because we get something that enters in the west part of our county and there's impacts, and the weather moves on, it doesn't mean we're out of it because we're a rectangle, and we're about like, 980 square miles, right? So we keep seeing that as it goes on if it trains over our entire county. And so we're in a response mode while we're in a preparation mode for the other half of the county kind of a deal. Um and and we call the weather service, but the responsibilities that say your forecasters have compared to theirs, right? Because we all know the Storm Prediction Center puts out, the meso discussions, the watches, those kind of things, but it's the local forecast offices that are pulling the triggers on the warnings and those kind of things. And they've got multiple counties, right? And ours obviously has multiple counties in two different states, just a vast area. And so I can call and they will answer, but the time they have to dedicate while they're trying to physically pull triggers and issue warnings for other areas of their area of responsibility, right? It's limiting. It just is. There's no way around, and that's to nobody's fault. That's just the reality of it. And your forecasters aren't putting out public warnings per se, right? They're not tripping NOAA weather radios or WEA or those kind of things, and EAS messages. They're watching weather and they're providing services to their direct customers. And so while I'm too busy to make a phone call because we're dealing with stuff, I can be on a phone call with that small town mayor, that fire chief, or that police sergeant that's tracking a tornado, and I can be typing a message to you and getting a response back within very few minutes, or asking for a phone call, or saying, "Hey, I've got staff that just came into the EOC. Will you get on this video link with us and just give us what your gut's telling you we're facing the rest of the night, so we can start planning for response and recovery." And it can happen, and it doesn't have to be delayed, um, like sometimes it is, because not that you guys don't cover a lot of areas in a lot of states, but when you've got fewer staff doing it, and still expected to deliver the same services. I mean, we all know what that's like, right? So again, they do an awesome job, and they're still a trusted, valued partner, but we have been able to supplement with being able to do those things. And again, that takes some off of their plate as well, so they can service other areas that maybe haven't entered into a partnership like we have with BAM.
That's a very, very, very good statement. Very well put. And this has been very informative, Doug, and much appreciated on your time and explanations here with things. Guys, as always, for those of you listening, please share it with a friend, leave us a review, post it up on your pages. Um, we are there to help fill that gap. We are there to help provide confidence in your decision-making process and be a tool for you to feel like you've got someone there to help you make very difficult decisions. So we appreciate your time, Doug, and your support, man, and thanks so much for coming on today.
Yeah, not a problem. Appreciate the invite. It's been fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. Been another episode here beyond the forecast, and we'll see you back here next week.